I was picking fruits and milking cows and doing all these random jobs at 27 thinking, what the fuck has happened here? I was a lawyer, last year. And I think it got me really, like growing up with a single mum on the poverty line in a very small village in Yorkshire in England, I felt suffocated. I was a dreamer. What I really do is help to connect cultures, people across cultures. If someone feels seen or if someone in the world understands a place a little bit better and doesn't have the same bias they would have had, then my job's done.
Hey crew, let's talk about the climb, not just the peak. Dickie Currer-Ganguli went from growing up on the poverty line in England to fruit picking in Melbourne to becoming the hype man of not just the Australian tech ecosystem, but APAC as a whole. He champions everyone's story for a living, and today we're actually going to flip the script on him and get an insight who Dickie is. Dickie, welcome to Fails Tales.
Thank you.
You've talked a little bit about your background growing up in Northern England and your mum raising you on her own, which is really, really amazing. How did that shape you into who you are today?
I think it gave me a lot of feminine energy, having a female, influence in my life. So my mum and my grandma brought me up together. I did join the army when I was 20, so I feel like maybe that was my injection of masculine energy that I needed. But from a young age, it meant that I had the intuition to really lean into that feminine side, which I think, made me a great communicator. It made me sort of be a caring human being. And I think I also saw how hard she had to work as a single mum to actually bring me up. She was working multiple jobs. She would take me with her. And so for me, I think I found an amazing role model. And I really learned a lot of lessons about what it means to grow and be a human.
So was it just the both of you? No siblings?
No siblings.
Wow.
Just only child.
Only child.
No pressure, right?
And so what did you decide to do with yourself? You joined the army. Why, first of all? That's an interesting decision to make.
It is, right? I think I'm a big reflector. And I think looking back now, it's because I feel like I wanted to learn what it meant to be a man, which I feel like is, now the older I am, I realize life's not like that. Life's very grey. And there's such a thing as being a man. There's very many different versions of what a man is. But I feel like I needed that sort of, having not had a father growing up, I sought the army out as a masculine influence to teach me about myself. I didn't know how to shave when I was 19, right? I didn't have a dad to turn around and go, how do I shave? The army's amazing for that. The army gives you so many skills, discipline, resilience, physical attributes, mental attributes. And I felt like I was always the person growing up that wanted to challenge, wanted to push myself, wanted to drive myself into new spaces, and wanted to be uncomfortable. And I felt like being uncomfortable is the only place you can grow.
And the army is a good place for that.
It is.
That's for sure.
I joined as an officer. So my first night in the army, I was put into a room with 6 other guys. And actually I was asleep. I got woken up. They came in and they were arguing about whether Eton or Harrow was the best school to go to and which one were the best in the boat race this year. Very posh. The 2 best schools in England, right? And I went to a working class school in Yorkshire. And they were like, "What school did you go to?" And I'm like, "Oh, Barlby High School." And they're like, "What? Where is that?" And for them, it was like I had 6 people looking at me like I was an alien. I swear they'd never seen anyone like me before, interacted with anyone like me before. It was one of the hardest challenges I think in my life to kind of to deal with that, and then to grow and learn. And in the end, I ended up becoming, I think several of them, I was their boss. A few of them I never really got along with, understandably. But in terms of a steep learning curve, it was amazing looking back.
Yeah. Wow. Your godmother then gave you an atlas, which similarly changed everything. Talk me through that process and how did it change you?
Yeah. So my godmother, Sally, she gave me the atlas when I was 8 years old. I say 8 when I'm talking on podcasts, but who knows? But by the age of sort of 9, 10, I could literally tell you every capital city, every country flag. I was obsessed with this atlas. I've still got it. It's now lost its cover. Its spine's kind of fallen to pieces, but it's like my most prized possession. And I think it got me really, growing up with a single mum on the poverty line in a very small village in Yorkshire in England. I felt suffocated, and I was a dreamer. I'd read this atlas and I'd dream about the places I could go to, the adventures that I could have, but they felt so distant for me. They felt like they were a million miles away. And then I sort of hit my adult life at 16, 17 and realized it wasn't. I was lucky to grow up in an age and a timeline where those things were very achievable to do now. can get a job, I could work hard, I could earn money, and then I could go and travel and see these places that I dreamt of as a kid that would never be achievable. And I feel like that wanderlust, that desire for adventure and to go into new places and experience new things has been a constant throughout my life based on that first atlas.
Yeah. Where was the first place you traveled to when you could?
I went to Denmark when I was 14 on an
cool.
exchange trip with my school, which was hilarious because the drinking age in Denmark is 14. So can you imagine a bunch of like English kids going there? It was quite fun. But I think my first solo trip was really proper solo trip was when I was 18, was to South America. I spent 6 months. I flew into Ecuador, flew out of Rio, and I grew up there. That was definitely the transition between being a boy and being an adult, you know, because I definitely learned what it means to look after yourself and got into some interesting scenarios, as you can imagine, an 18-year-old in South America would.
Do you have any PG stories that you could share?
Definitely not. They're all non-PG.
Oh, damn. Okay, fair. You then became a lawyer and then eventually moved to Melbourne. Like, talk about career changes and pivots. How did those come about, and then why Melbourne of all places in the world?
Yeah, so I went to law school during the time I was in the army as well, as I was an Army Reserve officer. And then I was destined to go full-time in the military. So I'd signed up my contract to go to Sandhurst and spend 4 years, I think it was, as an officer full-time in the military. And then I actually went traveling again and got a tropical disease when I was in Thailand.
Oof.
Yeah, which is called schistosomiasis or bilharzia. And it's basically a parasite that systematically shuts all your organs down. So pretty rough. Once I recovered, I was okay, but I wasn't the same level of fitness that I was at. And for me, it was like, if I'm going to go and do this full-time military career, I want to make sure I do it at the best I can actually do and be my peak. And so I thought, right, okay, what do I do now? Luckily, I've got a law degree. So I will jump into being a lawyer. And I was a criminal defense lawyer and immigration and asylum lawyer for a short period of time when I was 23, 24. So my job was to basically defend asylum seekers that were trying to get removed from the UK.
By that age, you joined the army, completed a law degree, and started working. Like, that is incredible.
Yeah. I know. I think that's why.
And traveled a lot.
That's why I've got grey hair in my 30s. I think it started when I was in my early 20s.
Wow.
I was a part-time army officer and then full-time immigration lawyer at 23. And I'd go home on a weekend, living in London, and I would just be thinking about my clients that were about to get removed from the country to Syria, Eritrea, Afghanistan, all over the world. It was pretty stressful. I finished up with that job, did a bit of work in travel. And then for me, I guess going back to the Atlas story, I always wanted to be a migrant. I always wanted to move to a different country.
Why?
Right? I think it's just constantly having that new experience, that new, I think again, like, I think you can be culturally uncomfortable as well. And I think like, I look at the world as being a jigsaw. And I feel like the more of it you see, the more pieces of the jigsaw you're putting together, and therefore the bigger picture you'll actually understand. That's kind of how I see the world. So I think you can, I'm very privileged to have a passport that allows me to travel the world, or 2 passports now in Australia and the UK. But I think you can find new experiences wherever you are, even if you don't have that privilege. But for me, having that privilege, I can sit there and think my prejudice about what I think a country's going to be like, but I never know until I've been there, right? So for me, it's like the more places you go to, and you can travel, and that's one experience, but living somewhere is completely different again. So I picked the easiest place you could travel to as a Brit and come to Australia. But at the time, like, me and my partner at the time were 26. We both finished jobs in London. We were kind of sick of the big city life. And we were like, let's go to Australia for a few months, see what happens. And then lo and behold, I think next week's my 11-year anniversary here. So, and it was exactly what I expected it would be. I had to start again. I couldn't join the military because I wasn't a citizen. I couldn't practice law because I didn't have an Australian law qualification. So it was started from scratch. And then I was picking fruits and milking cows and doing all these random jobs at 27 thinking, what the fuck has happened here? I was a lawyer, last year. But the growth that I got from that is just...
It's incredible.
I think, it set me up for the rest of my life.
When I was chatting with Desmond, he told me about the time when you guys both lived in a shared house and how much energy you had and how inspiring you were. So just from talking to you right now, I can just see that
Thanks.
Yeah.
This is my little brother. I got married on the weekend and he was my witness.
Aww.
His real name's John Desmond.
Yeah.
So I had to write that down in the witness thing. And I was like, gotta get this right because I'm going to fraud the wedding certificate.
Exactly. If you've made it this far, we are basically friends. Watching on YouTube, hit the like and subscribe button. Listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you stream your podcasts, hit the follow and like, and so that you can tune in for more next week. So what was the storytelling gap you saw within the Australian ecosystem? And why did you decide that you were the right person to kind of fill that gap?
I feel like there's a lack of human stories. And I feel like I kept meeting so many incredible founders and entrepreneurs that struggled to articulate what they were doing. Like you'd ask them and said, give me your one-line pitch. And it would be 2 minutes of technical spiel and jargon and waffle. And I'm like, it doesn't really work for the average person, right? Unless you're a technical domain expert in a certain field. Like, how do you talk about, biogenetics to someone who doesn't know nothing about it? How do you translate that? And I feel like my experiences, I started to realize through my 20s, through doing many different jobs, when you've communicated with asylum seekers, the army generals, you start to realize you start to have a skill, which is how do you communicate to loads of different people? And it's what my mum actually gave me as a kid. Like she was that kind of person that could talk to anyone. She's a social worker. And so she worked with the traveler community and people with neurodivergence. And so I feel like she gave that skill to me of you can communicate to anyone, anybody. And I feel like then my career sort of just helped enhance that. And I was like, well, I could be someone that's almost a translator. I think that's what storytelling is, right? Especially in the entrepreneurship industry. So someone that struggles to really be able to bring out that one-liner or bring out that real emotion through their story is something that I just was naturally quite good at. And so, that's when I jumped into it.
And so what was the first version of Hype Man Media?
I think it was just called Hype Man. So initially people started calling me the Hype Man.
Okay.
I always, there's a guy called Brian Borowski, and if you know him, I attribute this to him, but loosely, so he doesn't get the any subsidies. But I've said this several times now on media, and I'm like, at one point he's going to sue me. I'll ask for equity. No, he's a great guy. But I reckon there's a few people that sort of loosely said this term. I don't know why. And then I put it on my LinkedIn headline, and then that's when it stuck. And then people were buying me merch, and
cool.
So I think initially it was called Hype Man, and I just had a newsletter that I launched. And then I started to realize, I had to kind of steer people as to what it does in a way. And, at the time we were creating newsletters and content, podcasts and doing storytelling workshops. And I was like, well, it feels like media is the right forum, even though I think it's really a media and storytelling agency. So that was kind of the journey. And how often do you get to start a business that comes from a nickname that you've had,
Not very often.
And I was like, I'm just going to lean into it. But I think at first there was an insane amount of imposter syndrome, like there is with doing anything, right?
Yeah.
Even when you're in this world where you're surrounded by people who are taking such risk all the time. I felt like I had that initial imposter syndrome. And then I was like, screw it.
What was the transition like from being an employee to now being a founder yourself and developing this new thing in media, which I'm guessing was a new space for you?
Yeah.
How did you navigate that transition?
It was awful. Hated it. I think I'm one of those people that I've always had entrepreneurial mindset and the skills to be an entrepreneur, but not the risk tolerance. Because I grew up on the poverty line with a single mum, right? So it was I didn't see an entrepreneur. I didn't see a business owner growing up. It was I saw a woman that was just scrambling, doing every job she could to make money, and it was survival mode. So I grew up thinking I needed to always have that same survival mode and making money equal success. Not being someone that was defined by money, but money was almost a safety net. So starting my own business was terrifying. Even though I was in a community of people around me doing it, and I had all the resources you could ever want. Because I feel like it's almost impossible to work in this industry as an employee without eventually catching the bug and being like, 100%. Okay, well, I've got to start something. Yeah. And I was always kid that created all these ideas and, I'm going to do this, I'm going to have this project, and it never went anywhere. So I always had this drive. And I think things like the army make you a great entrepreneur as well, because you learn, how to get up every day, get punched in the face and keep going, quite literally, I think, in both industries. And so, but it was really hard to start. And to move away from being an employee was liberating, and it still is. But that first year, I just remember, the odd occasional LinkedIn scroll to see jobs and just think about that security. Oh, it must be so nice to have a salary again. Yeah. And I feel like it's been nearly 2 years now that I've been doing this on my own, solo away from a business. And I feel like that happens less and less now, and I think that's the initial hard part to get past when you've moved from having a secure career for 10, 15 years.
100%. What were some of the initial big wins that you encountered on that initial journey? Because I know often the first 6 months, first year is really, really tough when you're trying to prove yourself and like monetize what you're trying to build. Yeah. What was that first win that you thought, oh, this is the right path, I'm going to keep going? I had
a couple of clients before I started. So like I was working for a VC in Sydney and had like a 4-day-a-week job. And basically on the other 3 days, effectively, I was hustling and doing my own projects. I had the newsletter that we got a sponsor, and that was an ongoing retainer. And then I had people reaching out to me and asking me for paid LinkedIn content. So I was doing that. And then there was a few different other projects that were kind of coming about. And I started to realize that I was probably spending more time working on those projects than I was in the full-time role. And it was a new role as well. And I was like, okay. And so we had a conversation with the team. I was like, I think it's time to go solo on my own. So at least I already had, 2 or 3 things. There was already business there. I was ready to kind of move into it. And I'd also, during that time, I guess the reason what really pushed me and prompted me is I wanted to start traveling and take the things that I'd done in Australia global. And you can't do that when you're working for someone else.
No,
you need the flexibility, right? I think a big part was finding stability in other places. So like, I've just got married, like I said.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I got married in January in India, but I've just did my vows in Australia this weekend. But my wonderful wife, Pooja, she came into my life at that time when I was about to do it, and she pushed me off the edge. Basically.
Oh, wow.
She was like, be courageous, do it. You need to get started. And now we're co-founders in our businesses. So, but she was there from day one. She's always been a co-founder. I think that any partner really is a co-founder, whether they like it or not. So I said to her eventually, I was like, we might as well make it official and get you working in it because you've been here for the whole journey anyway. Yeah. So I think finding her as well just helped me kind of final, push over the edge, and knowing there was someone there to support and be almost that secure, like that calm in the chaos.
Yeah, now she's a hype woman.
Exactly. I get asked this question all the time. It's like, you can change the business name? I'm like, no. Because we don't need to. And I mean, hype man's got its own connotations, right? And so we do call the hype woman. We're going to get a t-shirt with
nice.
My mum's also got a t-shirt with hype mum on it.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah.
What advice would you give founders who are navigating that like really tough middle where they're working a full-time job or even part-time job and trying to decide what the best timing is to fully jump in and go solo? Because you get a diverse range of advice on this front, and I know it's different between whether you're like 18 and fresh out of school or if you're a bit more experienced and you have a mortgage or whatever, but generally what advice would you give founders who are thinking about that?
I think like pick the lifestyle that you want to have. Like that, for me, lifestyle should be the main driver. If you want to make a ton of money and have an enormous house and car, that's not my dream, but that is a lot of people's who work in entrepreneurship. Then how are you going to get there? Like, what is the lifestyle you want to have? If you want to work 20 hours a week, again, pick your job based on that. I said this, I do a lot of work in India. I was on a train last year. I said this to a lot of young people in India and they couldn't understand that concept because work is security, work is survival, right? But I think we're so privileged. Lots of people in the West are so privileged to be able to go, I can pick this job or this opportunity or where I want to do with my work life to build my own lifestyle. I would say make that your number one thing because that will generally dictate what you need to do next, right? And then I think in terms of when to start, I would say, base that on, it's like when you raise capital as a founder, right? If you're going to take VC money, I would always advise people, it's at the point where you can't no longer continue in your growth trajectory without the money, right? So it's like, don't try raising at the start. Raise when you're like, okay, there's too much work now. I need money and capital to inject and supercharge this. Same thing with that transition. If you start to get that point where, like I did, where you've got 2 or 3 days of steady work coming in, then your lifestyle dictates that you probably need to make the move. That's the point where it's like, okay, go all in.
It's time to risk it all.
But I think it's just about what lifestyle you might have a heart attack and then turn around the next day and go, I don't want to work for someone else anymore. And that's going to dictate what your lifestyle looks like in the future. For me, it's like that. My whole business and every choice I make is based on lifestyle, because people sometimes come up to you and say, well, how do you scale this? How do you grow this? You're going to hire 10 people in the next year. I'm like, no. Like, I want to, like, that's why my wife and I now are in the same business together, because we want to have a lifestyle where we can do this together and have complete flexibility.
What is your dream lifestyle?
Probably working 20 to 30 hours a week on like high impact projects. So working on initiatives or with founders that have a real impact lens, and things that we're doing are making a positive impact in the world. And that's global, so like, one week I'm speaking at a conference in China, the next I'm working on a project in Uganda, and there's always experience and difference and growth. And I want to write a book.
I think you should.
I've just started, actually.
Nice. It makes a lot of sense because you have such great diversity, but also depth in a lot of areas. So I think you 100% should.
It's about my experience becoming the Jamai of India, which means son-in-law in India. So it's like my experiences of what it's like to like start to grow into that space, and the things that I've learned across cultures.
Speaking of India, that was going to be my next question, because I came across you and your content while you were traveling through India. I remember seeing your LinkedIn post pop up, and you were giving updates from the train and the photos, and I thought, who is this man, firstly? And secondly, like, I kept hearing your name within the Australian ecosystem. People would be like, oh, you should talk to Dickie, blah, blah, blah. What took you to India, firstly, and how was that trip?
So it was my wife firstly, actually. I'd never been until I'd met her. It was one of those places where I was like, and I think there's a lot of places like that. So I grew up with this map, being like, I'm going to see every country in the world, right? I think now I'm 37. I'm like, I've been to 72 now.
Impressive.
I feel like every is not going to happen. Maybe 120, 130. And I feel like there was places then, and there's places still now, which are like, I'm waiting for the right time. India is one of those places. And the minute I met Pooja and we started talking about it, I was like, of course, I want to get to know that side of you. And that's actually when I decided I had to marry her. The minute we spent time together in India, and I saw that half of her world, because I think you can't see someone completely until you've seen them in their world. So that was the first trip, and we spent 6 weeks traveling across the country, and I actually asked her father if I could marry her at the very end of that trip. And then we went back for a program last year, and then, like I said, last year I spent, including the wedding time and the train you mentioned, I spent 3 months there. And now we're moving there in 2 weeks on the 4th of May. And so, yeah, I feel like it was driven by Pooja, but it was always a desire to go to India. And now I'm spending time there. It's just, I love the energy. I love the adventure. Every day feels like there's something new is going to happen. And I love, I guess, how I grow when I'm there. Spiritually, emotionally, mentally, I feel like it really broadens my horizons. And I think living across cultures and having like a cross-cultural relationship is a huge part of that too. Like, I feel like I do a lot of work in China as well. And so I'm currently fascinated by Eastern philosophy and how that is different to Western philosophy and communities and collectivist natures and all these different things. And I feel like it's really helping me to grow and challenge my bias and perspectives. And so that's why we're kind of going deeper into it at the moment.
Which is amazing. I've been to India once when I was, how old was I, 19? I went to volunteer in Delhi. I think I spent 2 weeks there, and over the weekends, me and my friends would travel to different parts and would catch the like public bus. And I had an amazing time, a truly amazing time. And it's funny, when I was telling my dad about the trip, he was like, this sounds like Nigeria. And I was like, you know what? Yes, it does. And thinking about it from an entrepreneurial sense, I feel like, and I hate this term, those more developing countries, they tend to have more of an entrepreneurial mindset than the more developed, because you have to. So you obviously agree with that.
Like, I feel like we talk about this in Australia, which is, I think sometimes what's holding Australia's tech ecosystem back and innovation back is the fact that life's good here. It's a lifestyle country, right? We have all the resources to be great entrepreneurs, but maybe we don't have the necessity or like the scarcity that exists, which is great, actually, really. Like, it's maybe not great for the economy, but it's great for the average human being here, right? But you're right, like it's almost like you have to become an entrepreneur. I'm doing some work with the Bhutanese government right now, and they've got, I think, something like 28% youth unemployment, and they're now trying to really upskill their young people to become entrepreneurs because they need to, because the jobs don't exist in the country, right? So sometimes that's, I guess, what drives this. And the train ride I was on that you mentioned, the the Jagrati Yatra was just, the most insane experience.
What was that?
So they take 600
600?
Young people, so between the age of sort of 18 and 25, and then about 100 mentors, which I was a mentor. I'm not 25, unfortunately. And stick them on a train, and you start in Bombay and finish in Bombay, and the train goes to 14 different cities across India. And every place you go to, there's like a full day program. So there's days where you do like, we went to the Indian Parliament. There's days you go to like the biggest eye hospital in India. You go to like a school, like the Kerala Startup Hub. So there's every part of it is about business, enterprise, government, politics. And the idea being it's like a hackathon, almost like an accelerator or incubator for the young people on this train. But you live on the train for 16 days, 8,000 kilometers. I was the only foreigner. In previous years, they'd had 30 to 40 foreigners, mostly American. And for some reason, the Indian government, it was because of Trump's tariffs. The Indian government stopped giving out visas to the Americans. So I got there and was like, is it just me? Okay, awesome. And I feel like in terms of an immersion, a cultural immersion and a business immersion as well, it was amazing. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And I've been in the military, right?
What was hard about it?
I probably got about 4 hours sleep a night.
Why?
Because we were finishing the program most days at 10, 11 p.m., getting back on the train. And then all the kids would be dancing around. Indian young people, there was no alcohol on this train, but they're just like their energy to dance. It's like nothing I've ever seen. And then till probably 2 a.m, and then the 6 o'clock in the morning, we'd have this music getting pumped through the tannoy to get everyone to wake up and start the day. And there was only like these man-made showers they'd put in these train compartments. That was just cold water. Sometimes there was no water. So I used the spray you get in the toilet to clean myself sometimes, which was a new life. Again, I've done worse things in my army days. And which it's great to have a cold shower when you're in Kerala and it's 30 degrees, but when it's 10 degrees in like Bihar or UP, it was freezing. And then there's no alcohol. I like to drink, so that was tough. no meat, which actually I was again a big meat eater, and so I was exhausted by the end. I felt like my body was like falling apart from the things that normally sustain it.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is there's no personal space, which is India personified ultimately, right? Which is one of the things I love about it. I always say there's no personal space for the body, mind, or soul in India. But on the train, you couldn't even put your arms out, really.
Wow. I mean, yeah.
In a carriage. And so as someone that loves to move, that was hard. And then the social battery, the greatest thing about India is the hospitality of the people, right? And on that train, I would walk through the carriages. There was 4 carriages to walk through to get to the bathrooms. No, 5, sorry. It would take me half an hour sometimes to get there because everyone would be jumping out going, Dickie, eat this snack. Dickie, tell us about this. Dickie, come and sing with us. Oh, we're dancing now. Come and dance with us. Which was amazing. But you imagine on like day 14, 15, when you're a bit sick, you're weak, and you're just like, it's the first time I've become an introvert in my life. I was like hiding, trying to find corners of the train, to hide in. Even the security guards, because there's about 100 staff on the train. Security guards, cooks, cleaners, they were like, some of them had never met a foreigner before. So they were like stopping me and asking me for my WhatsApp and like taking photos with me. And again, amazing. But I came off that train like an absolute shell of a human being. I was broken. And it was a month before my wedding. But it was great preparation because I got to the wedding and I'm like, it's easy now. Because I know I can be I've acclimatized culturally to everything at this point.
Wow.
It was nuts. I would highly recommend anyone listening to do it. But just prepare for an insane 2.5 weeks.
What did you learn about the Indian ecosystem?
So much. I guess the motivating factors, like I said, about that advice of picking your lifestyle. And it's like, I don't have that choice. I've got a family to provide for and my parents. And so I guess that side of things, just the industries people were working in, what motivates, what struggles that struggles find in that ecosystem and the things and supports they need. And I can still probably get 2 or 3 of them reach out to me a week asking me for advice on things, support. That one of them this week was like, I'm looking for a co-founder. I was like, what industry? Any? And I'm like, okay. But they want to do a dried fruits business, which is something that I'd never speak to someone here that does F&B, I think, so yeah, I feel like the way I look at business often in those scenarios, it's not often like the business learnings that are the most important. It's the human learnings. And I feel like there was so many human learnings about how people work, how they think, their styles and ways of communicating. And that was kind of what I came away. I remember saying to my wife, I remember calling her like one of the times being like, I didn't realize that I was going to be on a train with like 600 of our customers, basically, because we work in like, we do a lot of work with young people, we do a lot of work with people from India. And I was like, this is just like a mind-blowing immersion into, it's like going on a 2-week retreat with your customers, you know, like to understand people properly. But yeah, it was nuts.
From the outside, it sounds like a very glamorous, exciting job and like that you've created. How do you actually describe what you do for people who don't understand? Because it sounds very diverse, working directly with founders, but also governments, which is amazing. But how do you tie all those things together? Yeah,
I think I'd say like I help to enable growth in startup ecosystems, right? So whether that, I say innovation now because startup can have like connotations that it's like high growth tech, and I don't just work in tech. But I'd say I help to grow innovation ecosystems globally and connect them. And then naturally within that, it's helping entrepreneurs and founders to grow as well, right? I think you get that, but maybe if I tell my mum that, she doesn't quite, or my father-in-law, they're like, what's an ecosystem? What is innovation? But I think that's what I do. And I think more and more now, actually, with the global piece, yes, that's the vessel, but I feel like what I really do is help to connect cultures, people across cultures. And that's, I guess, like where I see myself moving into in the future.
Yeah. And I guess this is where your APAC Innovation Hub comes in.
Yeah.
Which is very exciting. Congratulations on the new venture.
You got the launch party next Thursday.
Wow. Just before you head off.
Yeah, that's one of my like life
goodbye party.
It's one of my life hacks for people. It is, because you basically combine it with and then everyone is just like, so I feel like you've got maybe like a 3-month window when you host an event. People are like, oh yeah, Dickie's event. And then we can vanish and no one will realize we've gone because they're like, oh, I had that event with. So it's one of my little life hacks with people when it comes to personal branding. But yeah, that's stemmed from that really. Like I say, 2 years ago when I started the business, it was because I wanted to travel. So going back a small step, I met someone 4 years ago when I first started working in innovation, and she was working at Monash University. Susie Ho, she's still there now. She's quite high up in the Monash vernacular. And she'd just been on a 6-week trip around Europe, profiling European startup ecosystems and what Australia could learn from that. And I was like, that's a job? People can do that? She's like, well, yeah. And I was like, that's what I want to do. And I was like, I'm going to do that. I've been spent, I guess, like 20 years of my professional life trying to work out how I could travel and find a really good purpose for that beyond just hedonism and pleasure, right? And so I thought, oh, I want to do that. So it took me a couple of years to get to the point. And the whole growth strategy was become the Melbourne tech innovation person, become the Australian tech and innovation person, and then grow that into being something beyond that globally, and then having that kind of narrative. Yeah. And so 2 years ago, the push was to then start traveling. And it just happened that I've always had this huge affinity with traveling across Asia. There's something about the continent that I absolutely love. And there's a massive gap in our innovation ecosystem now, is because 9% of founders look to go to the US, the rest go to UK, Europe, unless you've got a personal connection to China, India, or Southeast Asia, or maybe you've got an early customer there, or you've got an industry which really makes sense. But we're literally sitting on the edge of this continent, which has 5 billion people, an unbelievable opportunity. And naturally, people don't think about it because there's a cultural or language barrier, right, that exists. So a lot of the work we've been doing for the last 2 years at Hypeman Media has been storytelling in those markets. So it's how do you go to China? How do you go to India? How do you deal with those cultural differences? What things are happening right now in Indonesia, Malaysia? So it felt like a natural extension of that to launch APAC Innovation Hub to actually build infrastructure now as well. So we can be the people that go, right, well, we've told you how to go there. We've told you what it's like and got you excited about it and hyped you up about it. But now it's like, we also can support that journey through X, Y, Z. And naturally across that sort of 2 years, I've become that. I think I'm one of the best versed people, in the world now around the people that exist across the region, like who the key players are, how to do business across regions, how to connect people across regions. And so that thought was like, that's kind of driven the new business.
Makes a lot of sense. And I actually think you are the perfect person from Australia to or from the world to do it, because a lot of people often glamorize traveling and working and connecting, but they often don't think about the cultural differences and how you actually have to integrate and not just bring your Western, oh, this is like, we're so great, we've got it all figured out, just copy us. Like, you actually have to learn from them as well. And it's clear that you're willing to sit on a train with 600 bodies, go through that experience and really just immerse yourself. And so congratulations. I think that's
Thank
amazing.
You. My wife says that I'm an Indian uncle on the outside and a Chinese grandma on the inside. Because I've been to China like 5 times in the last year for work as well. And I like do Qigong exercises every morning in the backyard and drink like hot water when I wake up. And again, like I said to you at the start of the conversation, right? It's like starting to understand those parts of Eastern philosophy. And, I'm very cautious to not like slide into the realm of cultural appropriation, but it's like cultural celebration. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm sitting at home now reading the teachings of Lao Tzu because I want to understand more about that world. And I feel like for me, that's the spectrum of experience that exists in our universe, right? And it's I get quite a lot of indie people coming up to me being like, I just want to say, thank you so much for kind of like telling people about the real India and what exists. And I'm like, that is, for me, that's like, people say, what does impact look like in your job? I'm like, that is success, right? Like if someone feels seen, or if someone in the world understands a place a little bit better and doesn't have the same bias they would have had, then like my job's done ultimately.
India has very bad PR sometimes, unfortunately, which it should not be that way. Yeah.
Exactly.
You are a champion for women founders, migrant founders, and a lot of marginalized communities like you've spoken about. What have you learned from this work and how has that changed you?
I think it's good to set the context of why for me, which has always been because I'm a white male. That comes with its ease and comes with its benefits, right? But like I grew up super working class and found myself in spaces like that military space where I felt like the smallest marginalized person and like a complete alien to that world, and then see my mum. I got bullied as a kid because I had a single mum. Right.
Aww.
So like,
which makes no sense.
No, I know, right? It's honestly, it should be the opposite.
Exactly.
It should be like support this person because they need extra support. Right. So I grew up and when I first, I feel like I'd always been someone that, because of, I guess, this travel and this experience, economy that I was working in, I'd always been someone that was, and working with like asylum seekers, I'd always been someone that was like really conscious of seeing my privilege, understanding marginalized communities, and I'd never really, but I never really had a chance to do anything in that space. And then when I first started coming into the tech and innovation space and seeing all the terrible stats around gender equity, seeing the barriers that migrant entrepreneurs face, and people of different class, I was like, this feels like a purpose to the feelings that I've already kind of had and I've resonated with, like, ultimately, like I feel like my experiences never made me feel like I had an advantage, but it's like I know I have for many reasons. So that's really driven me to, I guess, move into this space. It's a hard place to work in because I feel like there's so many good people, there's so much good intention, there's so much good action that takes place, and then you look at the stats, and I just don't feel like things are really changing.
No,
especially in the gender equity space, which is really sad. And we live in the multicultural society now, but it doesn't always reflect in the tech industry. And I remember going to a talk at South by Southwest a few years ago, and forget who it was now, but one of the keynotes there saying, we don't want to live in a world which is just built by white 20-year-old male tech bros. And I'm like, that's exactly it, right? We want to live in an equitable world, so we have to make sure we have an equitable founder ecosystem to do that. So I think really that I've gone through my stages. I've gone through my parts where I was huge male advocate for women, and that's something that I still am, but I think maybe less so vocally. And then the same thing with migrant entrepreneurship, same thing with class. But I feel like the cultural piece now is kind of where I've found my real strong, I guess, advocacy, my long-term advocacy. And I'll always be a supporter for every marginalized community. But it's like, where do you put your effort? Where do you really throw your hat in the ring, right? And so doing a lot of this work now across Asia and across cultures is where I'm like, I want to make sure people feel like they're supported when they move here and vice versa.
You found your purpose, which a lot of people don't get to. So
I've been looking for it really hard. Like, I feel like that's when people actually look there, right?
They
I
do.
feel like for me, it's like that's what we're on the planet to do.
Yes.
You know, like to actually make it a better place. So
Yeah.
and I'll still stand up for everyone. Like, you know, for me, it's like every time we've got an event on, I'm like, right, there has to be a gender split. Like, it has to be equal. You know, I do a lot of advocacy still in that space, but it's like this cultural piece, I think, is where I've noticed that's my superpower. That's my story. That's my story, you know, so.
That makes sense. I think what's beautiful is that without using the word privilege, you kind of said that you acknowledge your privilege in the world and then looked at how you can use that to the benefit of other people and to uplift them, which I think is really beautiful.
I remember being an asylum, I was talking about this yesterday at home, being an asylum lawyer and sitting across, I was 24 and I was sitting across in London, sitting across from a Syrian man who was fleeing oppression in Syria, who was 24. And his story was, I think that he was, I think he got some gang or something chased after him, and it was a terrible story. And you saw it all the time, right? Because people would literally want to change their lives, as you would as well, right? So, and you're like, he got rejected asylum. I was trying to help him, but his story was just terrible. And I remember looking and thinking, if I was him, I'd be doing the same thing. I'd want to be trying to make myself a better person, right? And I've had the passport lottery. I've won the passport lottery of being born in the UK and then been able to move to Australia. And every time I apply for a visa, it's like, oh yeah, of course, you're British. Come on, like come through. And I looked at this man and it struck me then that I should always understand the privilege that I've got and try help others that don't have that sort of privilege, because who am I to, you know, why should I deserve better from the world? So, and then, you know, marrying someone from India and that growth and understanding that journey is now just really accelerating again that kind of feeling and that understanding of what privilege is and how you should use that and be responsible for it.
For sure. You posted on LinkedIn, I think it was last week, which really shocked me. And I was actually talking to Amy about this. And it was something like you said that a couple of years ago, you were really anxious about public speaking, which now I just can't even believe that. But what I took away from that is it's so easy to look at someone and think they've got it all figured out. Like they are natural. It looks like you were born being able to do all the things you do with hype media and everything, but that's not the case. You kind of had to push yourself, take risks and develop over time. And I just wish more founders realize that it's okay not to know how to do everything or not to be confident. It will come with time.
I think it comes from the British self-deprecating humor, you know, like that is ultimately, but I think I feel like I started to realize that the more success I had in the world was when I was the most vulnerable.
Wow.
And
really?
That actually came about from when I first started, I guess, moving into that female advocacy space was because I started sharing my mum's story about domestic violence. And then everyone started turning around and be like, wow, this is uplifting and we're empowered by this. And I started seeing my content metrics go through the roof. And that wasn't the driver, but I'm like, oh, I'm reaching so many people here. And I feel like I got so much respect from that. And also lots of personal growth and sort of satisfaction from that, almost closure, right? And so for me, it's like, I try to remind myself to be authentic in this, it's a very cliche word, but in the sense of like telling people if I'm not good at something, it's because I've worked hard or because I didn't used to be, you know, or there is potential. I want to make sure people feel inspired rather than looking at the internet and going, God, this person feels so far from what I can ever achieve. I feel like unmotivated by that. It's like, I think it's our responsibility to be like that. And not everyone can, but like I've kind of carved out my little niche in the world, which allows me to be that. And it's probably my favorite thing about it working in this industry is that like, if I feel something, I can tell people and it generally helps people relate to that or feel better or feel inspired or whatever, and or feel seen. And it also works for me as well. I get to like kind of tell people my story, you know, and like talking about, I never went to therapy. So talking on podcasts about my mum's domestic violence is kind of almost my way of sharing my story.
Wow.
Or on LinkedIn posts or whatever it is, you know,
Yeah.
or I do a keynote about it sometimes as well. And it's like, I feel very blessed to be able to do that. And I think that the closer my personality has got to my work, the more success I've had and the happier of a human I've been and the more confident I've been, because it just feels like I can turn up and be myself every day. There's never a mask on. There's never, I said this to my partner yesterday and I was like, I don't think that's why I can't work for anyone else full time at the moment, at least, you know, because I'm still in that. I don't want to have to change who I am. Like you tailor things slightly if you're doing different jobs. or projects or whatever that is, representing different people. Like I was saying to you before we started, I was like, can I swear? Because I do a lot of government work.
And you haven't sworn once.
I rarely do now when I'm talking on things.
Okay. It's just natural.
I threw one in because I was like, oh, as a treat to myself. But yeah, I think that's it, and so like that speaking, I want that speaking post is something that probably rotates that content every couple of months and talk about it to people, because it's like, I want that person that is shit scared of doing it. There's another one. To actually be like, oh, if I've seen Dickie on stage talking to thousands of people, if that's where he was then, I can also do the same and I can also grow the same, right? So, and it's not to brag and be like, look what I've done. It's more just like, hey, if you feel the same as this, don't count yourself out.
Wise words. Wise words. Is there any parting advice you'd like to give founders listening? The audience is pretty broad. Some are in Europe, a few in Asia, actually.
Cool.
So yeah, what advice would you give them, irrespective of where they're located?
Yeah, I would always say that. I think I've said it, but I'll repeat it, which is like, pick the lifestyle you want to live in the world. Make sure everything's got honest intentions and is making the world a better place. I really struggle to work with entrepreneurs that have got products that are just purely about capitalist intentions or commercial. I understand that, but and I always ask people what their why is beyond that, to try and understand what they're doing this for, right? If they want to make loads of money, then what are you going to do with that? Where are you taking that? So if we all, collectively innovated to do good things, can you imagine the world we'd be living in? It would be an absolute utopia, right? So think about that and think about what your why is and be really honest with that. And then for me, my word for the year is courage. So just be courageous and take that risk. I think if I look back on myself and give myself, if I give myself the advice I'd want when I was, say, 18, 20, I was very courageous, maybe not as an entrepreneur.
You were, yeah.
Yeah, I was courageous in the other things, moving countries and picking different jobs and working in high performance industries. But I always felt like I was too nervous to be a speaker or entrepreneur, all these things. But it turns out, like, these things happen if you just be courageous and keep trying and keep getting uncomfortable, which is literally why I'm moving to India right now. Because I'm like, life's comfortable at the minute. I need to change that and make it really hard for myself again.
You heard it here. Be courageous and get uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Dickie. This has been really good.
Thank you.